Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is One Day Today, episode 128 and going strong. Thank you all for being with us. I'm excited about our guest today, Chris Kyle, which you'll meet in a moment. But first off, I just want to start with an inquiry. If you were living in your dreams like today, right now, what would that make possible? What would you do? Would your life be going the way it's going right now, or would there be a shift in your behavior? Like what? And really sit with that. Like if you were living in just the biggest, fullest, deepest dream on your heart, and you were living into that, the fullness of that right now, today, like what would that make available for you, for your next door neighbor, your family, your friends, your community, your world? And I would assert, no matter where you're from, what you believe, what you look like, what color you are, what size you are, you have something unique in the space you hold that can empower, that can lift others up, that can be a seed of love, of laughter, of wonder, or beauty. And you have something unique that nobody else has. And I want to invite you to share that gift, to shine that gift. And that's what this space and this stage is about. This is a personal and community transformation platform, and we invite you to share your gift. And when we all, there's 7.88 billion people in the world now, I believe. And if we only have one gift, that's about 8 billion gifts we get to receive, at least. And I would say we all have more than one gift to share. But that's what we invite you to do here. That's what this is about, is what could we do today for something greater than ourselves, when we're actually living into our dreams today, not tomorrow, but just right now. Before I welcome our guests on the stage, let me say hello, all the way in Hawaii, which I always like to mention. Welcome to the stage, Matthew. Hello, brother.
Hey, brother man. I, you know, I'm actually kind of in awe at how in sync we are, even when we haven't really been communicating. Like, just for the record, I have not actually spent time talking to Abram in what, 2 weeks now, something like that. Like it's been a while. We've been off in our own worlds for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a brief
Yeah.
conversation, I think, when I was driving last week. But yeah, it was
Yeah, but it was
really,
just like logistical stuff. It wasn't.
yeah.
It wasn't anything deep. Like it wasn't. And literally this morning, like as I'm getting ready for the stage, I'm thinking about like this, like not in the same words that you're using, but I'm thinking about this. Like this is what's on my heart and on my mind, and I I do feel like there an opportunity exists today that maybe probably has never existed before. And that is an opportunity to create a society in which we support each other in finding our own meaningful lives.
Mm, hold that space for each other. Yeah.
We can hold that space for each other. Like we have technology and abilities and understanding today that have not existed on this planet before. Again, to my knowledge, like who knows, prehistory, but and like we're working on that here. Like this is part of what we're doing. Is we're that city on the hill is creating a society, creating a community, creating structure in which everyone is supported in finding their most meaningful existence.
Mm.
I don't know that we've ever actually said that in those words before.
Mm.
And I've been sitting with, and it's funny we have Chris on now because I know Chris is going through his own personal transformation. We were talking backstage beforehand. I'll let him share a lot of that. But um, Chris is actually known as a learning coach. Like that's what he's been doing for a long time, and teaching people how to grow their platform and grow their message. And here we are talking about living our dreams and encouraging others to live their dreams. How can we get that message out there? Like, is that like that is a bigger question? And is it something that we even need to do? Like, or is it just something that's going to happen naturally just because we're sharing what we're sharing and people want to listen to it? Um, I don't know. I don't have those answers, but like I'm just kind of amused. This is where we're at today.
Well, absolutely. And I think the question is, it's a valuable question and inquiry to, what can we do? But I think this is it's a journey of self, but there's like a premonition from the thunder of what's to come. But there, it's an inquiry and a discovery of self, and it's like, for me, it starts with, who am I, and like, what is this? We're born as, like, in this cosmic rock. We're just little specks, little ants in this giant universe, and it's like finding, it's not like we were born and say, like, and God said to us, so what do you think your meaning? What's the purpose of your life? It's not like we chose, at least consciously, in these identities, that we know consciously what we chose to be here for. And I think that's the discovery, is like, it's the opportunity. And I think from we use the terminology of, like, but the journey of the butterfly, from caterpillar to cocoon to butterfly, and that's a journey of self. And I think it's like having the courage to look, because from the position of the caterpillar, the being a butterfly is just an idea. We don't know what it's like being on purpose until we actually have the courage to go there and to look and ask those hard questions and look in our blind spots and look in those places that are uncomfortable, that are scary, that are confronting. And it's, say it a lot, the dark night of the mind leads to the bright day of the soul. And I think that takes courage. It's really easy to stay comfortable, just avoid those questions, because it's scary. Maybe better than I, the Marianne Williamson quote about, we're not afraid of how powerless we are.
We're not afraid of our dark side. We're afraid of our light. It's
we're
we're
infinitely
afraid
powerful.
of how powerful we actually are.
And I think there's so much truth in that. And I mean, I could tell that for myself, but also just seeing others. It's like, we're afraid to dream. It's like because when we're in that space of the caterpillar, it's just like, what if I dream big, then I'm going to be a failure and I will never do it, and it's not possible. And it's like, you never know until you try, until you commit to it and actually discover what we uniquely have that can lift others up. And it requires going on the skinny branches. It requires doing things that would be uncomfortable from the position of the caterpillar. Trying to fly is not comfortable for a caterpillar.
The
I assume.
difference
I've never
between
been one.
us and caterpillars, though, is we don't have to do it alone. And I feel like that's like, we don't have many structures that are available to the majority of people on this planet that help facilitate that transition. Like, most people don't have access to the tools, to the psychology, to the understanding, to just the simple mindful awareness and critical thinking skills that really help move you down that path of caterpillar to butterfly. And that's where I'm saying, like, we have this opportunity to create a structure that reaches the masses that supports that.
Absolutely. And I think that's the choice we have right now, and right now, and right now. And it's I think that's kind of the hump to overcome, is to actually see that we have a choice in that. And like what you're saying about others, and like how because there's tools everywhere, like everyone can access every tool, but it's like almost an abundance of information. So it's like, just speaking for myself, in my journey, a big part of it, when I was really seeking to transform my experience of, myself, and what is this all about? What is this? Who am I? Why am I? And why bother? When I was in that space, it was like something that I was looking everywhere outside of me. I was looking everywhere but inside, but I exhausted. I was reading, getting deep into spiritual readings and teachings from a spectrum of, different spiritual teachers. But I was also, like theology, religious studies, psychology, philosophy. Like, give me just a sponge for knowledge. Like, I want to hear, I want to find, like, I was looking for truth like it was something I could read in a book. And the irony on the other side of that, for me, was that the knowledge didn't really make a difference. It was an experience that actually made a difference. When I discovered myself as something much greater than my thoughts about myself, when I experienced God or the universe as something much different than my thoughts about those things, and distinguishing that, it's like, oh, here's my thoughts about me, here's my thoughts about God and the universe, but those aren't the same thing as what there actually are. And I think, I've shared this story a lot, but when I had that my awakening experience, it was this poem that came to me where I didn't write this, the poem wrote me, and it was, today is the day, instead of playing it safe, I can choose to enter into that space, to be willing to face the chaos in front of my face. God is giving me grace, all the pain and disgrace goes away, and I can't help but embrace the possibility and fill in that page to create a new reality I never knew could take place. And it was like, that was the most authentic thing I'd ever came out of my mouth or out of my pen. Like, I literally had to pull over on the freeway to write this down, because it was the most true thing I'd ever felt or experienced, or it had just came out. And it was the discovery that we all have that. We all get to choose today what it is that what future we're living into. We all get to create the context of our day, of our reality. We shape whatever circumstances happen. We get to choose how we respond and who we are in the face of those things. And this is the opportunity, and this is what this community is about, is people who are up to things greater than themselves and have found something amazing on the other side of their trials and traumas and tribulations. And I'm excited about our guest today. I think it's a good time. Let's bring Chris Kyle to the stage.
Chris.
Hey.
Welcome, Chris.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. Good to see you both, Abram, Matthew. It's great to be here with you.
Right back
So
at you,
great to
brother.
have you. We're just gonna jump right in. I want to hear. We've spoken a lot, and I'm inspired by who you are, what you're up to. But I want to hear your story, and we'll talk after you share. But if you're ready, Chris, without further ado, Chris, the stage is yours.
Well, thank you both. Well, first of all, both of you had drop the mic moments. So that was really, really beautiful what you each shared in your own way. And certainly, Matthew, as you were talking about, the deepest question is, what does it really mean to be living my most meaningful life, or a life that has most resonance for me, or a life that feels most full and rich? And, I think that's a great kickoff point for me, what you both brought up around this journey of transformation, of learning and growing. And I think, for today, as I've been mulling on being on this with you all today and being here on the virtual stage, is like, what is most up for me now, or what is most current that's authentic for me now? And I think what it is for me is, and I shared a bit of this with Matthew before we started started actually broadcasting, and that I'm in my own transition right now at this stage in my life. Actually in my mid 50s, and I'm had a really great run of 12 plus years of doing work in the helping people to really get their message out there in a bigger way through online programs and courses. And part of my purpose statement is to help people, well, just like both of you and many like you, is to help you light up the world with your message, to really light up the world with your message. And that my vision is seeing many million points of light all around the planet, where people are giving their gift and sharing it, but doing it in a way where they're teaching and educating and supporting others. So I've been in that, and I've been passionate about that. And, it's the great question of life is there an arc of that? Is there a time where that ends? Or is that just, well, that's what I'm doing for the next 20 years of my life? And for me, what's really shifted is over the last several years, I've really been feeling like this particular way of the work, the gift that I'm giving, was feeling like it was naturally coming to an end, that something else really wanted to emerge in me. I've been on a long journey of 30, 40 plus years of personal development and all the workshops and programs and men's work and therapists, and I feel like I've done it all. And to point that you made, actually, Abram, which was, in a way, a lot of the work I'd done was seeking out answers sort of from outside of myself, right? Like doing the workouts, even with a therapist or even with a small group or even in my men's group, there was still a quality of kind of getting the support outside, getting the insights, the wisdom from others, and trying to integrate that rather than really deeply coming into my own wisdom, coming into this interior, my deeper nature, my true nature, and what wants to come out from there, rather than kind of seeking what's out there. What might I do and what might be accepted? What would people like? I'm excited about this. I'm passionate about it. So I'm going to create this. But where is it coming from? Where is that creation coming from? And I would say for much of my life, that creation was coming more from a mental or a heady way of saying, I think this would be cool. This would be great for the world. I think I can make money from this. I think this would be interesting. And what do you all think? Or what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Oh, okay, great. Well, I'm going to go do this. And it's really been in the last 4 or 5 years that I've been really working to change that pattern of the outside in. And I know both of you can relate to that. I know lots of people I talk to in our global modern culture, it's a lot of outside in. All the entertainment, knowledge, teachers, things. It's like we're ingesting all of that and then trying to filter, what does that mean for me? Versus that inside out journey. I go inward. I trust that there's information there. I trust that there's a message there. And maybe even the wisdom is not from other human beings, but wisdom from, from the earth, from animals, trees, plants, from sources that I don't even think are, that are part of the human world. So the non-human guides and support, our higher guides. So there's this kind of like, wow, there's different ways to begin to access what is this meaningful life for me? What's the next phase for me? What's the next step for me? And if I'm like anything, if I'm like all of nature, if I'm like part of the living system of planet Earth, then I'm growing and evolving. I'm growing and evolving just like a flower, a tree, any kind of plant, any other animal that we know. We're growing, we're evolving. And then at some point I will die. So for me now, I'm beginning to look at what is really moving inside of me and where am I drawing from my own wisdom, but also wisdom beyond just the sort of the classical human realm wisdom. So a little story, that's kind of the context, but I'd like to tell a story that's really been super meaningful for me over the last few years. And it's really a deeply powerful and transformational moment that's really helping me to propel me on a different course in my life. So as I said, for the last 12 years, I've been an e-learning expert and a teacher, a guide, coach, helping people mostly to create online learning programs to get their message, their content, their teaching out into the world. So I work with a lot of authors, speakers, coaches, entrepreneurs, small business owners, right? All of them to create personal development programs for their audience. And all over the map, like for all range of topics, crazy. And I've loved that. And so, but what I felt was finally starting to feel a calling of something new. And so I decided to do a program with one of my friends and a colleague. His name is, he's Bill Plotkin. He's the founder of the Animas Valley Institute in Durango, Colorado. And he has a program. One of his programs is called the Soulcraft Intensive. And it's a 5-day intensive out in nature. They actually also have a full Vision Quest 13-day thing. And this in a way is sort of a light version of that. And I couldn't spare the full 13 days off the grid. So I love Bill. I love what he's up to. And so I went up to British Columbia to Salt Spring Island, just off the coast of Vancouver Island. This is about now 4 years ago. And I showed up for this 5-day intensive with Bill. There were probably about 25 of us from all over the world there. And it was really incredibly profound. So in the first few days, most of the time we spent was out on the land, just cruising around on our own. Mostly we'd come back and do some share circles and then go back out on the land. And then as the days moved on toward day 4 and 5, we were spending all day and all night out on the land, whether sleeping on the land or awake or not, no tents, just really immersing ourselves fully in the natural environment. And so on this experience, which I was really beginning to unwind myself and dropping more in and feeling more connected to the natural world around me there, beautiful setting on this island. It was like 300 plus acres of the retreat center we were on, plus it was up against protected land too. So it was just like magical, huge trees and beautiful little meadows and small little ponds and lakes. And so I was just feeling the beauty of the natural world around me, also starting to just unwind from all my busyness and the crazy workday and not having my phone at all, and just being present, fully present to the experience. So on day 4, so this is the second to last day, I'd spent all night out. I kind of dozed a little bit, but I was just on the land. I'd find a little kind of area against a tree trunk or a little divot in the earth and just lay down and kind of get a little cat nap, and then sort of something would wake me up and I just kind of follow that. And so I kind of did that all night. And in the morning, as the sun was coming up and still out on the land, I climbed up, or just sort of up a little ridge to a top of a ridge line, not very high, but up on the top there were a few pine. It was sort of open space. It wasn't like forested. And there was this one massive, beautiful pine tree with its roots exposed, and it clearly, the roots were burned and part of the tree were blackened, so there was clearly something had happened, fire had blown through there and had burned part of the tree, although it looked fine and looked healthy. It wasn't dead, but it had been charred. So I was just curious, right? So here I am out in nature. I've been just more and more present, and the curiosity and the sense of wonder, and I wonder what happened to this tree. And so I went up and I went right up to the tree and was looking at the roots and kind of put my hand on the bark of the tree and just sat at the base there for a moment. And then as I stood up, I just faced the tree and stood up and put my hand on the bark. And I just remember, it was just this kind of flood of well-being and sense of connection. And I began this amazing conversation with this old pine tree by just simply asking in my mind, so who are you? And my first question was, what happened to you? As in, seeing the burnt out roots. And then this incredible moment of really directly hearing the response from this beautiful pine tree. And for me, it was a clairaudient moment. So meaning I was really hearing the actual words, not the felt sense or pictures, but the actual words. And so this beautiful pine tree answered me and said, well, there was a fire that was here a few years ago that burned down, kind of burnt, my part of me, but I'm good, I'm okay. And so as the conversation, there was some other kind of questions I asked, but at first was like, what can I call you? And so I wound up calling this tree Dear One. And then Dear One liked to call me Little One. And there was a palpable sense of a sort of a feminine energy, but there was no gender sense. It was just, so there was Dear One and here is Little One, but there was this motherly mama, Pachamama kind of energy or feeling. And so as the conversation just kind of, I can't remember the questions that I asked and the responses back, but as I came toward kind of the real question that I wanted to ask, and this really goes to your question, Matthew, earlier, is the question really was, so Dear One, what do you see for me? What wisdom or insight do you have for me at this transition in my life, that I'm feeling something that wants to come out, or something that feels like a new path for me, but I don't know it. I don't have a sense of it. And so Dear One, there's this a little pause, and Dear One says, well, beautiful question, Little One. And what I have for you is this, which is to teach them to love the earth again. To teach them to love the earth again. And it still moves me. This is 4 years ago, and it still deeply moves me. Like, that the feeling was that I needed to come back into right relationship with the whole world, everything, the natural world, the human world, and that it was time for me to deeply love, particularly this beautiful earth that we are on, that we share this space with, and is to be able to provide that beautiful, loving connection to the earth. And then her invitation to me was to teach them to love the earth again. And as I sat with that after our conversation, I really began to feel that the them, for me, is leaders. All the work that I've done with leaders, leaders, actually organizational leaders, corporate leaders, entrepreneur leaders, and even just thought leaders. And I just really began to feel like, oh, I'm feeling called into inviting people to come and have some experience on the land that changes them, that moves them, that shifts them, just like I had on this experience called the Soulcraft Intensive. And so this moving experience just shifted me. It kind of just like broke me open and down. And like there was this kind of possibility that felt more like this interior of knowingness in me that was reflected by this beautiful tree, not by some other human being. And that this guide, this wise guide, dear one, reflected back what I think I already knew in me, which was it was time to create more healing from this broken relationship. And it is truly that this broken relationship between human and the natural world, the world that what Bill Plotkin and others call the more than human world. So all of this around us, and there's been this sort of break, and the break is actually very recent in the scope of human history and the scope of the planet. And so for me, it's now this journey that's been unfolding for those years where I actually, in a humble way said, I need to be a student again and really learn about, the natural world, environmental, issues, working with people on the land. And so I did a master's program. I just graduated in May in outdoor education leadership at Prescott College. And it was all from this moment of saying, okay, I'm going to start to learn and grow in this arena to begin to now do different kind of work, more of my soul's work, my soul's calling work, more of the work that I know is important for the planet and more feeding me in the actual experience of delivering this work. Feels more aligned, feels more purposefully aligned. It wasn't like the other work was not good, and it felt very purposeful, and it was my own business, and it's awesome, but it had run its course. And so so to kind of wrap this up and turn it back, I'd love to all three of us to be talking about it, but it's really set me now on this journey to really as almost a mantra of teach them to love the earth again, which starts with me. It's really healing, reconnecting myself to the natural world in a beautiful way, and then begin to do work with leaders in nature. And so my master's program was really about me creating a leadership development design, a way of doing nature-based practices, mindful practices in nature that can inform leaders in their capacity, different ways of thinking and different ways of being to be a more conscious, healthy leader, but also to make different choices going forward for their organization and for the planet. And so that's the kind of whole underside of this is, can we make better and more potent decisions for ourselves and for our human family and for the world? Because it's pretty much we're in dire straits now. But the beauty of it is it's not dire straits like, fuck, let's give up. It's dire straits like it's time to wake up. Let's wake up and do things differently. And so it's a wake up call. And so I'm in my own wake up call. I'm looking to shift this and really change sort of not only the way I inhabit my life and the earth, but also helping others to do that as well. So that's me. You guys come back on. Want to see you. I'm kind of tired of looking at my own face. There you go.
Here we are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Chris, thank you for sharing. It's such a powerful story, and there's so much that comes up for me. And you kind of answered this, as you were kind of concluding. There's kind of two parts of this for me, but what do you think? I think, well, put it this way: like when you say, like, I love just imagining you talking to a tree. I saw like a children's book. It was something so wholehearted, and how you had this recognition and this conversation that led you to see like we have to learn to love the earth again. And but I think a big part of that is you saw yourself in the natural order. You saw, like, I feel like a big part of it is it's like we're born into this world. There's all this cement and concrete and cars. We just kind of feel, and it looks like everything was always this way. It's like, so we never even think differently. But it's like, but I really hear in your story, you connected with the internal Mother Earth that's always been there, but you saw yourself in that. You were like kind of, you felt like the warm embrace that has always been there, but you were fully in that moment.
Yes. Yeah, that's great, Abram. Yeah, very much so. And it actually allowed me to arc back in my life as a little boy, before all of the ego structures start to really get solidified. And I remembered I had these flashbacks of this intimate relationship with the natural world that was fluid and effortless as a little man. Maybe each of you have had that experience at 5, 6, 8, 9, that I remember actually talking to this beautiful oak tree at about 7, 8 years old in the backyard in Northern California. And now that was kind of streaming back to me. Oh yeah, I wasn't just talking to myself, which I sort of remember just kind of like on my own talking to myself. I was having this conversation with the tree, and there was this like coming back home into the embrace that it's always been there, Abram, that it's always been around me, and the support has always been there, and the willingness for the natural world to speak to me, for me to open to it. It's always been there. And it's, as you all have said earlier, a little bit about our own human experiment of creating our own identities and our identity projects and all that, is just simply that process just disconnects us from what is already there and what's already present. And you mentioned it about children's book. One of my favorite children's books growing up, and even as an adult, is Shel Silverstein's The Giving Tree. You guys know that one? Yeah, Matthew? Yeah. And remember, he's talking to the tree, and the tree just keeps giving. It's giving its branches, its leaves, its branches, its trunk. And it's such a beautiful story of just that the tree is giving, and the boy has a loving relationship, but keeps taking from it, cutting it down and making a boat and doing. So, and that's always impacted me. And so that's another remembrance for me of all this deep abiding connection, particularly to trees. And so, yeah, so I hear what you're saying there. And there's such a resonance for me now that I know that there's even a deeper current, that Dear One is connected to even a deeper current of the wisdom of life, of a much broader voice and a broader connection, that Dear One's just an antenna for other wisdom that can come through, that's not just the tree that she is there, or that the Dear One is there on the hillside. She's reminded me I'm much bigger than that. I'm not just this solitary tree. I am connected to the web of life with the information that's coming through for you if you want it or not. So that's another big opening for me. Yeah, that's the warm embrace, the full embrace, not just the tree there in Salt Spring Island. Yeah.
Yeah, little one is not so little after all. Yeah.
Exactly. Little one is not so. Yeah.
One other question that kind of comes to me here, and this is kind of rephrasing of an inquiry we ask often here, is, what is your highest aim? But I would even go a step further with you in this question. Is like, what is it? Just go in this vision of humans. We love the earth, and we have a harmonious relationship with the earth, and our architecture and our food, our culture is all reflection of that. What does that look like? What does that smell like? What does that taste like? What does it make available? Like the world, say when we do go down that path.
Yeah, it's a really important, great question, beautiful question. What is it? What does it look like, smell like? What's possible for, from this place of that we are, that the healing, the relationship has been healed, and we're in full love of the whole earth, human beings loving each other as well as human beings loving the earth. Here's the thing that I feel in this is that I don't believe in hearkening back to somehow like 1,000 years ago and just sort of return back to the land and get rid of all our devices and everything. So this is where the challenge I live within it is, I think there needs to be a conscious reconnecting to all of life to the living system that is planet Earth, and begin to get creative of how we do this in a way that is regenerative, supportive, and fully connected. So that may mean new kinds of technologies that emerge, but that are much more in harmony with understanding how we support the whole ecosystem of planet Earth, not just the human beings. Because the fundamental break in the scientific revolution, and particularly the rise of organized religions at a high level, the fundamental thing is man's dominion over nature. And that the scientific revolution breaking everything down into component parts so that we understand everything, and that we then control the system as human beings that can have this understanding. That's the break. Instead of a sense of integration and harmony and connection with everything, it's a break it down to understand it and unpack it, and then figure out how we can create nuclear fission from this knowledge that we have. So there's nothing wrong in that, but that has sent us on a path. And now I do feel like what it looks like and smells like and tastes like are really incredible communities that are intending to come together all around the planet with a regenerative mindset, with a beyond sustainability mindset, with a way of whatever we're using or doing and the technologies we use, we're conscious of how we're using them and the impact that those have around our immediate environment and the broader global environment. And that we each need to be a part of the solution to see if we can shift what's going on now that is not healthy for the planet, and begin to create structures and systems and even technologies that are thinking of the whole living system. And then that to me looks amazing. Like, I'm sure you've seen photos of the future of cities. I mean, all the stuff, where like they're like green roofs everywhere, right? Everything is solar or wind, or, all the technologies here for us to begin to create this sort of more Garden of Eden. But I will say that one of the biggest challenges, and I know you both know this, and there's no way around it, is there's almost 8 billion people on the planet, and that's not slowing down. And it's very difficult to deal with what we have here when that's going to go to 9 and 10 and 12 and 15. So how do we deal with that? Just that, not all the other pollution, just that there's more people means more stuff and more things being built and made. Even if they're sustainably done, it's just difficult. So that's my concern and worry, and that's why I think we're seeing the Earth respond through pandemics and diseases and things. I mean, the mother is also trying to respond here to what's happening. And in a way, 15 billion or 20 billion people on the planet, the way we're going, is not sustainable. So look out.
It doesn't really feel like 8 billion is sustainable. And
right.
I don't know that we're actually going to get to those numbers, the 10, 12 billion. Looking at the data that's been coming out over the last 10 years, it looks more like we're actually moving into a phase of population decline, drastic population decline.
Yeah. I see all that too, all the science around that. Just the climate disruption itself. We know where we're going to be in 30 years, and it's going to be very small zones of inhabitable areas for human beings.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, exactly.
The key word that you
go
saying,
go ahead. Can you let Matt?
Yeah,
I want to just hear Matthew's thread. Yeah, he's going somewhere there.
Yeah. We don't know. Like, we have models, we have predictions, but we don't actually know what's going to happen next. And so I feel like if we get too stuck in our heads worrying about all these models and like trying to prevent them, subconsciously we'll end up creating them. There's a Hopi saying that I absolutely love. Fear is the fastest way to create what you don't want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
if we're living in fear, if we're creating out of fear, then what we don't want is ultimately what we're getting up with, most likely.
That's so well said, Matthew. This is exactly, as I unpacked Teach Them to Love the Earth Again, Matthew, this is exactly, it's about like beginning to embrace the love of the planet. And this is the core of the environmental movement that has missed the mark for 40 years, Matthew, is fear. Fear, 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 fear. The planet's going to go away and you better protect it. Protect, 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 protect. And what I realized in my own journey and talking with so many other people, can I step into a place of positivity of how can I love the earth again, not protect it, not do something that says you fucking corporate types, It's all anger and fear, anger and fear, anger and fear. And that's the message. And others are saying this, not just me, in this whole quote unquote, the environmental movement that has grown so big needs to shift into this place about teaching people to come back into right relationship with the planet, loving it again, and then choosing things from a place of love, Matthew, not a place of fear. And that's what I'm seeing in communities. I'm here in Costa Rica. Oh, I didn't get to say that. So everyone, hey, I just moved here with my partner to Costa Rica as a part of this whole unfolding, to go to a place that's wild and raw, smaller community, can grow a lot of our own food. So we're here in Costa Rica to kind of live more of the model that we feel like we can do that without, spending an arm and a leg to live in the San Francisco Bay Area. Like we can do it simply here. And so to your point, though, there's this more of this kind of draw to then being in like-minded community, living from a more regenerative space, from a loving space, from a space of positivity, and modeling what we want, not pointing the finger or the fear of, oh shit, this is all going to hell in a handbasket. We've got to do something from the fear place. Let's do something from the place of love and possibility. And even if it's going to go to more to shit, I think there's going to be that consciousness that's going to arise of those that are modeling it and living it that could perpetuate the human species from a different standpoint 200 years from now or 300 years from now. And I don't know. I mean, that's the hope. It's a possibility. But I also know this planet had 6 extinction events. Hey, we think we're so great. We may just go extinct. I mean, it's possible. Why not just say it with a little smile on our face and say, it's possible.
It's possible.
And it's all right. And that's why Elon Musk and others are literally so like, we got to get off this planet. We got to be a multi-planetary species. But I get it. He's saying the same thing is like, if we want to live as a species, it may not be on this planet, which sucks. I hate thinking that,
Oh, no, I get that too. And as much as I love Elon and some of these other people that are doing these big things with lots of money, they're still doing it from the fear place.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. Yeah.
And, that's not necessarily, like, I don't think about that in terms of good or bad. Like, that's not a bad thing. That's just where they're at right now. And ultimately, my experience has been all things work towards good. Mm-hmm. Eventually. Mm-hmm. Now, that may not mean the human race is still going to be here. That may not mean the planet is, like, will support the human race at 12 billion people. Like, who knows what that actually looks like.
Right.
But at some level, and I suppose I should rephrase that because I don't think in terms of good or bad, and yet that Jesus, like that Bible quote gets stuck in my head all the time. At some level, all things work towards love.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to reiterate what you were saying. It's like, I don't know maybe it was Eckhart Tolle. So what you resist persists. It feels like it's a platitude, but it's true. Like what you're saying about speaking in fear, how whatever we source in fear and anger, resentment, you name the lot. It's like it's a garden. The more we water those fear thoughts, and we have fear actions, and we're at the impact of that. But I think the key word, and I was going to say, like, for me, it's the deep resonant value. But the word that stood out to me was harmony. What you were saying, it's and harmony is distinct for me because some of these exercises, I'm sure I same story as you, Chris, with the self-development and workshops and forums and seminars and a lot. Sometimes they'll have like, let's find your core values. I've done several, and some of them are more like platitude about speaking, like just to put it in a bumper sticker. But some of them are actually inquiries, like what is it drives me deeply, whether I do it or not. There's an impact because it's something I value at the core. And for me, harmony is distinct. I mean, for me, it's like, do I value unity? Do I value connection and community, which I do? But it's like, for me, it's the harmony. It's like, you sing this note just as a natural self-expression. You sing this note, but it's like when we sing those notes together, it's greater than the sum of its parts. And I think that's for me, that is what is, it's like, it's the beauty that manifests from singing our song. And
Mhm.
and I think when we are connected with who we are, as a divine expression of the universe, which includes nature, the trees, the cells in our body, they all operate on the same laws of physics, but also the same metaphysical plane of what we can't see and unmanifested existence and reality. It all comes from the same
Yes.
place. And where we are before we are born and where we go after we die. It's like it's beyond our mind's comprehension. But it's something that we all can tap into. It's all something, but I think the harmony aspect, it's like, for me, it's like what you're saying about technology. It's not going back to the dark ages. We can always, I mean, that's always a possibility. We just nuke ourselves and
Right.
a small band of people live and fight over their version of the New Testament of God. And, we could repeat, we could have our wars and here and over this and that. But, for me, it's, the harmony aspect, like especially with technology, especially with nature, like it's when we are creating and sourcing our culture, our inventions, our communities, our well-being, our habits, our rituals, for the betterment of, it's like the golden rule. It's like, for the betterment of my neighbor. If I say this a lot, if my neighbor is healthy and safe, especially during the pandemic, that means I'm healthy and safe. And I think that's true with nature. When we love the earth, we're ultimately loving ourselves. And it's like,
Mhm.
and it's the disconnection is that we think those are separate things, like
Right.
the source of
Yeah.
all we are and all that is in this universe. But it's in nature, in the natural cycle, when we pretend or forget, I should say, that that's not who we are and that's not us, and we dishonor and overlook that connection. And I think that it's harmony. That's where harmony is available. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
this is you or me. This tree is me. Like little one. And what was it? Was it dear one or
Dear one, and then
dear
I'm
one?
little one. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, little one and dear one are enmeshed together. Like there's no separating. But it's
Right.
like, but it's, we all have that's the harmony. It's the harmony between little one and great one, and little one and little one and great one and great one. It's like, it's the harmony that we achieve things greater than the limitations of our fears, of our minds, of our survival paradigm, of our just like right, wrong, good, bad paradigm, where we think where our life is about getting a bunch of shiny toys, getting rich, and showing people how great we are, and dying. And like,
Yeah.
it's like
And
that, and
Abram,
like, yeah.
and what's so good about what you're saying is what I noticed from direct experience for myself, and already taking people out into deeper nature for any period of time, getting out of our cities, getting out of our homes, even our structures, even people that are in a natural setting that's beautiful, they're still in their homes a lot. And when we get out on the land, what I notice for me is there is more of that sense as I spend more time, even if there's other humans with me, I have an actual direct experience of that harmony you're talking about. It leaves an intellectual place that you're talking about, into a sense of I'm in flow. That's another good word. I'm in harmony and flow with what's happening around me. I'm walking in the meadow, looking at the trees. I'm opening my senses. I'm being more present to what's around me rather than to my own thoughts. I start to notice my natural place in things. I start to feel that sense of harmony, natural harmony. And if I'm with other human beings, guess what happens too is I start to feel a natural harmony and resonance with these other human beings out in nature. And it doesn't mean that we're not in our offices and in our cars and all that, but that as I begin to heal my own disconnection from nature, as I become more intimate and I'm more time, and even in a park, even in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, that I can actually appreciate the harmony of both the natural world, but also what's possible for human beings to be in that harmonic resonance of everything. So it's not just the singing of the voices of human beings, but how about the singing of the trees, the singing of the ocean? The whales actually do sing. We know that, right, Matthew? So there is like everything is singing, Abram. And it is always hard to come back as this idea of that harmony is still kind of around a human dynamic of harmony. I know you're not saying that, but that the most human beings kind of feel like it comes all back to our human way of living rather than some harmony by allowing myself to be opened by nature, by the natural world, the more than human world, which I'm already a part of and I'm fully immersed in. And my cellular structure and the energy of me is just no different than a tree or a plant or a crocodile or a whale. So I do resonate with the harmony piece, and I resonate with what Matthew is saying, is that's my whole thing now, is how can I bring more compassion, care, and love into my heart, into everything I'm doing. And that certainly applies to leaders. See, this is the thing, is without just going back to the 70s, it's all about love. Well, it's kind of all about love. That was the thing about everybody poo-pooed after the 60s. It's, oh, you guys, just get over that. It's all about love. Well, it was kind of true. That was the breakthrough for human beings to go, shit, we're looking in the wrong direction. And now we need to look more toward our hearts and love and compassion, care. Yeah. Sorry, Matthew. Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. I'm incredibly grateful that we have that example to look back on. And I've talked to some of the leaders of that movement and asked them where it fell apart, and their answer was pretty much all the same. Like, we didn't feel secure. Like, that's what it came down to. Like, we didn't feel secure. We felt like we had to get jobs. We had to go make a living. Like, this is the society that we actually live in, and we had to embrace that reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, the structure wasn't there before.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that now. So now we have the opportunity to actually start building this structure. This structure to support a society that actually works more from the heart, that lives more in that heart space, in that harmonious space, and in connection with nature and the trees and all living beings, not just humans.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's a good point, Matt. I just want to say one quick thing, is that I'm already starting to see what we'd call a diaspora from the cities back to the land. If you remember in the 1800s, massive movement from the farmlands into the cities. And now there's this kind of thing of like, how can we come back into small communities and rural villages, be organic farmers, all that. At the same time, what's brand new is the visions for the cities, like how to reinvent the cities and how to reinvent. So it's both a movement to the land, but you can't get all 8 billion people moving to the land. I mean, you could, but how do we reinvent the cities so they're regenerative cities, that they're fully self-sustaining? And then you're going to see more people moving back to the land, like my partner and I, here in Costa Rica. And then this idea of the structures of really understanding how community on the land and growing great food and all that is a powerful, viable path back into sort of this right relationship. So we have those structures. How do you create community? How can you have be off the grid energetically? I mean, with energy off the grid for your community, all these things we can use technology and service to a new way of living and being that I think is in more harmony and is in more natural flow with the earth. It's just, is that going to happen for all 8 billion people? No. Is it going to happen in 5 years? No. Are we going to hit these unfortunate things that are going to happen to the planet during that time? Yes. So as Margaret Wheatley says in her book, it's about it's really all about community going forward. Small communities of conscious, intentional people that come together and support each other and figure out ways to be in healthy relation with the land, with the community, and with the world at large. And I do think that that's one of the pathways out, and not necessarily for every human being, but for a lot of people. So
yeah, because it does come back to that question of what's meaningful for you. Not all 8 billion people are going to want to live a life outland. That's not their meaningful existence.
Yeah.
And so if in creating society that supports everyone finding their meaning, there has to be room for that too.
Mm-hmm.
Because the scientists, like there are a lot of scientists who are living their most meaningful life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is just the nature of it. But so this brings us back to a question, and you've kind of alluded to this a little bit, like you've talked around it and you've kind of teased some of the stuff that you're actually doing now. But would you actually like walk through some of the structures you're creating to teach leaders this, to bring leaders back to loving nature?
Yeah. Thank you, Matthew. So that was really my intention, to go back to school, to go back to get my master's, was to really think through this exact question. How do I want to bring this passion this idea, this gift from the tree, teach them to love the earth again, into something meaningful that could help change lives. So that was my whole thought going into the master's. And so what I was able to do through all my research and thinking about it, my advisors, reading lots of books, was to begin to, what became clear was I wanted to develop a new kind of leadership design, a leadership development design of how can we rethink the way we grow and become more effective leaders, more conscious, effective leaders for our time now. So I literally built, based on my own experience in doing leadership development work, based on a lot of the works that I read, based particularly on one woman who I read her book and then met her, and we had a great connection, and she became one of my thesis advisors, Kathy Allen, who wrote a book called Leading from the Roots. And it really, what came up for me was building a new kind of design or framework for leadership development based on capacities that are directly related to what living systems teach us, what the natural world teaches us. So I developed this design framework that has 4 quadrants to it. Again, very elemental, the 4 elements, the 4 directions. There's definitely an element all through it of ancient, knowledge, indigenous knowledge and wisdom, and then modern thinking. And so it's these 4 areas that I developed with simple framework in those 4 areas, and then specific practices that I wanted to create for people to do in nature that would just inform insights and ways of seeing that capacity. So the simple structure is that one quadrant or one area is called looking out. And that's about sensing. So looking out just simply means all senses, not just vision, but looking out into the world. So you can do that in a meadow. It's a beautiful thing, right? You just get really present and you notice I'm looking out, I'm sensing the space around me, sensing it. That's everything, all my senses, even my intuitive sense. So that's sensing out. The next quadrant is looking in, and that is feeling. So that's now I'm looking inward. So I'm looking out, I can see, I can get super present with every little thing happening, and there's a monkey in the tree there, and there's an iguana over there. But then now I need to look inward. What's happening in my inner terrain? And that looking in is that classic area of feeling, of emotional intelligence, understanding what's here. That's a lot of what's being taught in leadership development circles, right? Is emotional intelligence, mindfulness, and all that. But I just wove it in here is that I can also be in nature where I slow myself down, I get present, I can get present to self as well as to things around me. And then what's really moving, what's the emotion, and the emotions churning, the physical, the sensations in the body, whatever, feeling. And then the other one is choosing. And that choosing is all about decision-making and acting, and also being responsible and understanding the impacts of my choices. So a lot of that is even just as simple as, especially in Native American lore, is a certain way of walking through the woods where you aren't heard. That as you're hunting for your food, you can walk with such intention, and every step is a choice. Every step is a choice, and I'm aware of what's happening with every step. So there is this big part of leadership work is about healthy and clear and conscious decision making, that again, the natural world and living systems can help bring that forward. And then the last one is about being with, and then the capacity is presencing. And that's all about being fully present to whatever is in the space, being with other, being with challenge, being with difficulty, being with beauty. Can I just be present with whatever is happening? And so those are the 4 capacities of that is sensing, feeling, acting, and presencing. And when I look out in my own work and my own development as a leader, I wanted to simplify. I didn't want a 30-point model of this, and you got to go in the spiral down to the spiral dynamic of whatever, I like integral theory and I like spiral dynamics, but I didn't want it to be a heady model. So I do know as a leader that if I'm sensing what's in the space, even in the boardroom, that's a powerful capacity. Get out of my own freaking head. What's in the space? Looking in is critical. It's the number one thing leaders are being taught today. What is going on inside of you? Why are you angry? Why are you frustrated? What's happening? What's the emotional intelligence, and how to connect with other people's feelings in the workspace so we're not just all automatons. But nature can help inform that even more. And then, of course, decision-making is critical. And then presencing, I think, in a way, kind of is the master capacity of that. I mean, it's still one of the 4, but as we come through all 3 to this one, It's around bringing full presence to what I'm doing as a being, as a human being, but also as a leader. So that's the design. That's the leadership development design that I've created and tested. And I actually had my first gig with a paid gig with an organization, and they went through it and they had a good experience. But I learned a lot about how to take like a team through this experience versus individual people that are totally excited about it versus a team like, what's this thing about? So I learned a lot. So this is the genesis of my work, but I'm still feeling into it. I'm still in a fallow creative space. How do I want to do this? What's the best way? Who do I want to invite into it? So that's a little snippet of the work of this structure. So now, like this organization I did, is I provided some ways for them to think about how to integrate what they did all day out in nature, how to integrate that back in their day-to-day life. And I have very specific ways that they can think about each of those quadrants and what they can bring to awareness to keep developing that capacity from the practices. And then I have practices for each of those in nature that they went through. So it's practice-based model, really. Practice-based design, yeah. So I know that was a lot. Sorry, guys, you got me excited. That was open up Pandora's box, Matthew. Sorry.
Oh, I appreciate you sharing. That sounds amazing.
That.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. And I'm moved by your commitment to you're putting your money where your mouth is, I should say. How everything has led to this point in your own development of, supporting others and, teaching them how to, have models of learning and, and how you're taking this wisdom from Great One, from the tree, and giving it to others. And you're bringing us back to ourselves by bringing us back to loving nature. And I think it's it's just inspiring and it's moving to hear more about, everything as it unfolds. And we'd love to hear more about it and how people can get involved and what leaders who are interested in participating. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Abram. Yeah, I appreciate that. And, for me, I mean, just, if there's an email link here, you just email me right now. I'm still in transition to this new way of being, but anybody that's feeling called or inspired to connect with me around this in some form or fashion, just email me. I guess, Abram, you can provide that somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, I'll put that in the comments here. I'll share
while he's throwing that up there. Do you have a really firm working definition of compassion?
I mean, this is the core of my spiritual path. I'm in a spiritual sangha, and a lot of the work is just about compassion, compassionate heart for self and others. I think I'll just follow the Dalai Lama's lead. It's this energetic of loving kindness. It's having a loving heart and holding a sense of love for all beings. Compassion does not mean full empathy or having to give my shirt off my back to somebody else. It's just that I can hold every being in loving kindness, in a heart's embrace, whether I know them or not, whether I'm in relationship with them or not. And I do think compassion extends to everything, to all creatures, all beings. And so, like mine, my vow is that, I will awaken for the sake of all beings. And so the journey of being more awake and more conscious, and that path is about serving that greater good, serving other beings, not just myself. And in the core of that, Matthew, for me is a compassionate heart for all beings.
There's a choice in that though too, isn't there? Like, this is something I've sat with for a long time now. And Abram and I were having a conversation several months ago. I don't even know how long ago now, maybe even a year ago. And this subject came up, and there was a definition that came to me, not from me, but it's one that still resonates today. And that is, compassion is the ability to discern when it is appropriate to interfere in someone else's journey. And when that came out, I got really sad for a little while. And it took me a minute to figure out what I was sad about. And I realized that I was sad because if there were times when it was inappropriate to interfere, that meant that I just had to watch them suffer. And I was like, okay, well, what's sad about watching them suffer? And then it was this realization that, oh, it's sad because I believe that at some level it's not necessary. Is there any such thing as unnecessary suffering? And the answer that came was no. Like, there's just suffering. It's not necessary or unnecessary. It's just suffering. And in suffering, there is an opportunity. There's an opportunity to grow, to learn, to become stronger. Like, we can choose to suffer. We can go to the gym.
Yes.
We can go put ourselves through therapy. We can do these things that are painful, but ultimately they make us stronger and bigger and greater than what we were before. And the difference between the choosing the suffering and just being in suffering is that we're not aware of the lessons we can learn from our situation we're in now.
Yeah, that's good.
And so it really does feel like it all comes back to awareness, like what you were saying earlier. To bring greater awareness to every aspect of my beingness.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. It's a beautiful frame for compassion, and it brings it all the way back to, the core, the core learning is that we are, as human beings here, we're in a place of suffering at all levels, even the simplest things, mental suffering to physical suffering to being caught in our own patterns is a form of suffering. So it bringing that idea of loving kindness to suffering beings, including myself, is being compassionate, is how can I support somebody in whatever they're going through or not? And can I bring compassion even if that suffering person, Matthew, I'm not interacting with at all? So there is that kind of sense of understanding that I can bring a warm, loving heart to all beings, because at some level we're all suffering until we're fully awake and fully realized and out of any kind, or beyond this body, right? Beyond this human existence, whatever that is, beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing. There's a field.
There's a field.
Yeah.
There. So
It reminds me of a song. So it's a spiritual song by Mississippi John Hurt, and it moves me to the core of this day. I sometimes I like to play it on this platform, but the lyric of the verse is, "You gotta walk that lonesome valley. You gotta walk it for yourself. Ain't nobody else can walk it for you. You gotta walk that valley for yourself." And he goes around like, my mama had to walk that lonesome valley. My daddy had to walk that lonesome valley. He had to walk it for himself. Then Jesus had to walk that lonesome. So it's like, it's one of the most simple spiritual lessons is we can't walk anyone else's valley. We can't. The old adage, you can lead a horse to water. We can't rescue someone from their suffering.
That's right.
We can love them. And sometimes I love you, it means let me hug you and hold you and tell you it's going to be okay. And sometimes it means I'm going to give you space. And it's, and I think and like Matthew was saying, it's the discernment of who we can be to invite or be that clearing for someone to experience that suffering is a choice. And we've all been on both sides of it. Chris, I just want to say it's such an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure to have you. Just so moved and inspired by you and your commitment for the world, your love for the earth, and just that you are giving that wisdom and that gift and imparting it to others, to leaders, at a time that it's not only needed. I just see it's essential. If we want to actually thrive in a world of our creation, rather than the opposite of thriving in a world of our fear and our consumption and our disconnection from who we truly are. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Abram. I appreciate that. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you both. Just been a treat to just have this conversation with you both. Thank you.
Absolutely. I saw you have to go soon. So, Chris, thank you so much. We'll talk
Yeah,
more
thank you.
soon.
Thank you
Until
both.
next time.
Yeah, be well.
Thank you.
Talk
Thank
to
you,
you later.
Chris.
Aloha.
And for those of you who
Aloha. Yes.
Aloha.
Aloha
Well, thank
spirit.
you all. Thank you all for
Thanks.
being here with us. Thank you. Thanks again, Chris. Those
Okay.
of you being, I just want to thank you for joining us and being a part of this. And I want to invite you. If you, no matter who you are, I want to invite you to share your gift, your story, the wisdom that you've discovered or you're discovering. In the darkest times of your life. I want to invite you to be a guest on the stage. We want to hold space for you to share what you've discovered to be you on the other side of that scary, dark, lonely times. That's what this is about, is when we actually have courage to face those scary, dark times. It's like that's when we can shine the brightest. That's when we have something to lift someone else up who's dealing with what we are facing or what we face. And that's what this is about. This one day is, this is a platform for personal and community transformation, but our mission is bringing you and me and communities together in joyous celebration, unifying humanity in our diversity to create a better world for us all. And that's what this is about. Our vision is humanity is rising in a connected world. Each person's unique gifts, unique genius, and contributions are being valued and magnified through a higher level of collaboration, producing unprecedented new realms of possibility. I love you all. We'll see you next time. Be safe, be well, and as always, one day is today. Peace, everybody.